My wife took my car keys right out of my hand and dangled them in front of my face like I was some kind of child. "Walk if you want to go out," she said, her voice dripping with that condescending tone she perfected over the past few months. This wasn't about the keys. This was about control, and she thought she had it. I was getting ready to meet some friends at a sports bar downtown. Nothing crazy, just a few beers and catching the game. But apparently, that was too much freedom for her liking. She'd been escalating these power plays for weeks now, testing how much I'd tolerate before I broke. "Seriously?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "You're taking my keys now?" She crossed her arms, keys still dangling from her finger. "You heard me. If going out is so important to you, then walk. Or better yet, stay home where you belong." Where I belong. Like I was some kind of pet that needed to be kept on a leash. The old me might have argued, might have pleaded my case about how I work all week and deserve a night out with friends. But something had shifted in how I saw these little control games of hers. They weren't worth the energy anymore. "All right," I said simply, pulling out my phone. Her smug expression faltered slightly. She was expecting a fight, expecting me to beg for my own car keys back. When I didn't react the way she scripted in her head, confusion crept across her face. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching me scroll through my contacts. "You said walk if I want to go out. I'm finding another way." I kept my tone casual, like this was the most reasonable solution in the world. "Unless you want to give me back what's mine." The keys stopped swinging. "You're not seriously going to call someone else?" "Why wouldn't I? You made it clear I can't use my own vehicle." I found the contact I was looking for and hit call. Problem solved. Her face went from smug to panicked in about 3 seconds. This wasn't how her little power trip was supposed to go. She wanted me to cave, to choose staying home over the inconvenience of finding alternative transportation. Instead, I was treating her ultimatum exactly like what it was, an obstacle to work around rather than submit to. "Hang up the phone," she said, her voice losing that commanding edge. I ignored her, listening to the phone ring. She stepped closer, reaching for my phone, but I simply turned away. The person I called didn't answer, so I tried another contact. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice cracked slightly. "You're being childish." "I'm being childish." I looked at her, really looked at her, holding my car keys like some kind of trophy. "You confiscated my property and gave me an ultimatum. I accepted your terms. How exactly is that childish?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The logic was simple, and she knew it. She'd painted herself into a corner with her own dramatic gesture, and now she was realizing the consequences weren't what she expected. My second call went to voicemail too. As I was about to try a third number, I heard a car pulling into our driveway. Perfect timing. Through the window, I could see her best friend getting out of her red sports car. "Looks like I won't need that ride after all," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. My wife's eyes widened as she saw who was outside. "She's here to see me, not you." "We'll see about that." I headed toward the front door, leaving her standing there with my keys, looking like she'd just realized she'd made a terrible miscalculation. The doorbell rang before I reached it. When I opened the door, her best friend was standing there with a knowing smile, like she'd heard the whole argument through the thin walls. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, glancing past me toward my wife. I could hear raised voices from the driveway. "Just a small disagreement about transportation," I said calmly. "Nothing that can't be worked out." My wife appeared behind me, still clutching my keys. We were just having a discussion. Her best friend looked between us, taking in the scene. My wife holding car keys that obviously weren't hers, me standing there completely composed, and the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Discussion about what?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already had a pretty good idea. "About whether I'm allowed to use my own car to go out tonight," I said matter-of-factly. Apparently, walking is my only approved option. The look that crossed her friend's face was something between surprise and disappointment. Not directed at me, but at my wife. That look said everything about how this power play appeared to someone on the outside. Her best friend's eyes moved from the keys in my wife's hand to my face, and I could see the exact moment she processed what was happening. The disappointment in her expression deepened. "You took his car keys?" she asked my wife directly. "It's not like that," my wife started, but her friend held up a hand. "It's exactly like that," I said. "She decided I needed permission to leave the house tonight. When I didn't ask for it, she confiscated my transportation." The silence stretched for about 5 seconds before her friend shook her head. That's not okay. My wife's face flushed red. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. Her friend's voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard before. She turned to me with an apologetic smile. Need a ride? I was actually heading out anyway. Before I could answer, she added with just enough edge to cut. I actually enjoy having a man in my passenger seat. The shot was perfectly aimed and hit its target dead center. My wife's mouth fell open like she'd been slapped. Her best friend had just called out her controlling behavior and offered me exactly what she was trying to withhold, all while making it clear that treating a man with respect wasn't a foreign concept to her. That would be great, I said, grabbing my jacket from the hook by the door. I appreciate it. My wife finally found her voice. You can't be serious. Why can't I be? I asked. You told me to walk if I wanted to go out. She's offering me a better alternative. Problem solved. She's my friend, and she's being more reasonable about this situation than you are. I looked at my wife holding those keys like they were some kind of weapon. Keep the keys. I don't need them tonight. Her best friend was already walking back toward her car, clearly disgusted with what she'd witnessed. Come on, she called over her shoulder. Let's get you where you need to go. As I started to follow, my wife grabbed my arm. Don't you dare get in that car. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her face. Or what? You'll take away something else that belongs to me. She released my arm like it was on fire. The reality was sinking in fast. She'd overplayed her hand completely. Instead of keeping me home under her control, she'd just handed me over to someone who was treating me with the basic respect she'd refused to show. This is ridiculous, she said, but her voice was getting higher, more desperate. You're my husband. Then act like I'm worth more than a set of confiscated keys and ultimatums. I walked toward the sports car where her friend was waiting with the engine running. Through the windshield, I could see her shaking her head in disbelief at the whole situation. You're really doing this, my wife called after me. I paused at the passenger door and looked back at her standing in our doorway, still clutching my keys like some kind of security blanket. You gave me two choices, walk or stay home. I'm choosing option 3. There is no option 3. There is now. I opened the car door. Thanks for the ride. Anytime, her friend said, loud enough for my wife to hear. A woman should build her man up, not tear him down. Another perfectly aimed shot. My wife's face went from red to white as the implications of that comment hit home. Her own best friend had just called out her behavior in terms that couldn't be misunderstood. I settled into the leather passenger seat and buckled my seatbelt. The car was immaculate, smelled like vanilla, and the sound system was playing classic rock at the perfect volume. It was the complete opposite of the tension-filled house I'd just left. Where to? She asked, putting the car in reverse. Downtown Sports Bar on 5th Street, I said. And thank you for this. You didn't have to get involved. Yes, I did. She glanced toward the house where my wife was still standing in the doorway, watching us with an expression that looked like she was witnessing a car accident. What she just did was completely out of line. As we pulled out of the driveway, I could see my wife in the side mirror, still holding my keys, finally understanding that her little power play had backfired spectacularly. Instead of controlling my evening, she'd just handed me over to someone who appreciated what she was taking for granted. She's been doing stuff like this more often lately, her friend said once we were on the street. The controlling behavior. You've noticed? Hard not to. A few weeks ago, she was bragging about how she trained you not to go out with your friends as much. She glanced over at me. I told her that wasn't something to be proud of. The picture was getting clearer. This wasn't just tonight's tantrum. This had been a systematic campaign to shrink my world down to what she found acceptable. And she'd been proud of it, bragging to her friends about how well she had me under control. Well, I said, watching the familiar streets go by. Looks like the training didn't take as well as she thought. The sports car handled like a dream as we cruised toward downtown. Her friend had good taste in music too. Old school rock that didn't require conversation, but didn't create awkward silence either. After a few blocks, she broke the quiet. I owe you an apology, she said, keeping her eyes on the road. For what? For not speaking up sooner. I've watched her chip away at you for months now, and I should have said something. I looked over at her profile. She was focused on driving, but there was genuine regret in her voice. It's not your job to referee my marriage. Maybe not, but friendship means calling out bad behavior when you see it. She switched lanes smoothly, the engine purring beneath us. What she did tonight was the last straw for me. My phone buzzed. Text message. I glanced at the screen and saw my wife's name. Then another buzz. And another. Let me guess, her friend said, noticing the rapid-fire notifications. Suddenly she wants to talk? I checked the messages. The first one was angry. This is embarrassing. Come home right now. The second was bargaining. We can discuss this like adults if you just come back. The third was getting desperate. You're making a scene in front of my best friend. She's worried about appearances, I said, showing her the screen at a red light. She read the messages and snorted. Now she cares about how this looks? She should have thought about that before she decided to play power games with your car keys. Another buzz. This time it was a call. I declined it and put the phone on silent. You know what the crazy part is? Her friend continued as the light turned green. She talks about you constantly. How successful you are. How other women always flirt with you at parties. How lucky she is to have you. Funny way of showing it. That's what I told her last week when she was complaining that you wanted to go to your friend's birthday party. I said, if you're so worried about other women appreciating what you have, maybe try appreciating it yourself. The pieces were falling into place. The controlling behavior wasn't coming from a place of indifference. It was coming from insecurity. She was so afraid of losing me that she was doing everything in her power to make sure I had no other options. The irony was suffocating. What did she say to that? That I didn't understand marriage, since I'm single. She pulled into a parking spot across from the sports bar with practiced ease. She said marriage requires compromise and sacrifice. Sacrifice, sure, but it shouldn't require surrendering your dignity. She turned off the engine and looked at me directly for the first time since we'd gotten in the car. Exactly. And what she did tonight had nothing to do with compromise. That was pure control. My phone lit up again. This time it was buzzing continuously with calls. When I glanced at the screen, it showed 17 missed calls in the past 10 minutes. She's panicking, her friend observed, watching my phone light up like a Christmas tree. Good. Maybe now she'll understand what it feels like when someone else controls whether you can come and go as you please. We got out of the car, and I could hear my phone still buzzing inside my pocket. The sports bar was busy for a weeknight, warm lights spilling out onto the sidewalk along with the sound of laughter and conversation. You sure you don't want to answer that? She asked, nodding toward my still buzzing pocket. She made her position clear. I can walk if I want to go out. Well, I found a better way to get here, and now I'm here. If she has something to say, she can say it when I get home. Her friend smiled, the first genuinely pleased expression I'd seen from her all evening. You know what? I think I'll grab a drink myself. Mind some company. Before I could answer, my phone stopped buzzing for about 30 seconds, then started up again with a vengeance. 23 missed calls now. Actually, I said, pulling out the phone and powering it off completely. I think that sounds perfect. And thank you for the ride, for speaking up, for not pretending what happened back there was normal. Don't thank me yet, she said, holding the door to the bar open. Wait until you see how she reacts to finding out I stayed for drinks too. As we walked inside, I realized this was the first time in months that I felt completely relaxed. No walking on eggshells, no calculating whether my words would trigger another control episode, no anxiety about whether my plans would be approved or sabotaged. The bartender was a guy I'd seen here before, friendly enough, poured honest drinks. What can I get you folks? 2 whiskey sours, her friend said before I could order. And keep them coming. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? The bartender asked with a grin. She looked at me with a mischievous smile. A man rediscovering his backbone. The bartender laughed and started mixing the drinks. I had to admit, it felt good to be around someone who wasn't constantly looking for reasons to be offended or opportunities to assert control. When I finally powered my phone back on 3 hours later, there were 47 missed calls and 62 text messages waiting for me. Her friend dropped me off around 11:30, and I could see every light in the house blazing before we even turned onto my street. My wife was pacing in the living room window like a caged animal, and the moment she saw the red sports car pull into the driveway, she was at the front door. Thanks for tonight, I told her friend. I needed that more than I realized. Anytime. And remember what we talked about in there. You deserve to be treated with respect, not like property. The front door swung open before I was halfway up the walkway. My wife stood there in her pajamas, hair disheveled, eyes red and wild. She looked like she hadn't sat down since we left. Where the hell have you been? She screamed before I even reached the porch. Out, I said simply, walking past her into the house. Like I told you I was going to be. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I called you 47 times. 47. I know. I saw the missed calls when I turned my phone back on. I hung up my jacket calmly, like this was any other night coming home. Did you need something urgent, or were you just checking to make sure I was walking like you told me to? Her face turned that particular shade of red that meant she was about to completely lose it. You were with her the entire time. Her name is Jessica. She's been your best friend for 8 years. And yes, she was kind enough to give me a ride. Problem. Her voice cracked on the word. My husband spent the entire night out with another woman while ignoring my calls. And you're asking if I have a problem? I turned to face her fully, and she actually took a step back. Maybe she could see in my expression that her usual tactics weren't going to work tonight. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said, keeping my voice level and cold. You took my car keys. You told me to walk if I wanted to go out. Your friend offered me a ride. I accepted. And now you're angry that I did exactly what you told me to do. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Then say what you mean. Use clear words instead of playing games. She started pacing again, her hands shaking. I meant you should have stayed home. Then you should have said that. But you didn't, did you? You said walk if I wanted to go out. So I found a way to go out without walking. Your friend was more respectful to me in 4 hours than you've been in 4 months. Don't you dare compare me to her. Why not? She treated me like an adult. She didn't take my belongings. She didn't give me ultimatums. She actually enjoyed my company instead of acting like it was some kind of burden she had to manage. My wife's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. She was flirting with you all night. Was she? Or was she just treating me with basic human decency? And that seems like flirting compared to how you treat me. That stopped her pacing. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. How I treat you? I'm your wife. I take care of this house. I cook your meals. I do your laundry. And apparently you think that gives you the right to control when I can leave the house and take away my car keys like I'm a teenager who missed curfew. I was trying to keep us together, she screamed. Every time you go out with your friends, you come home different, more distant, like you're comparing me to other people and finding me lacking. Finally, some honesty. But it was too little, too late. So your solution was to make sure I couldn't go anywhere or talk to anyone else. To shrink my world down until you were the only person in it. I didn't. I wasn't trying to. Yes, you were. And you know what the really sad part is? I was happy to come home to you before all this started. I chose you every single time. But instead of trusting that, you decided to make it so I couldn't choose anyone else. She was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I was scared. You're successful, you're attractive, women notice you, and I thought. You thought what? That the only way to keep me was to trap me. I thought if I let you go out whenever you wanted, you'd realize you could do better than me. The confession hung in the air between us. All those months of control, all those ultimatums and power plays, all stemmed from her own insecurity and fear. But understanding the why didn't excuse the what. So you decided to prove you were right by treating me so badly that I actually started thinking I could do better? She looked up at me through her tears, and I could see the exact moment she realized how perfectly she'd engineered her own worst fear. That's not. I didn't mean. Tonight, your best friend showed me more respect and consideration than you've shown me in months. She didn't take my keys. She didn't give me ultimatums. She just treated me like a person worth being around. She's trying to steal you from me. She doesn't have to steal anything. You're handing me over on a silver platter every time you pull stunts like tonight. My wife was still sobbing when my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and saw Jessica's name. The message was simple. We need to talk. There are things you should know. Who's texting you at midnight? My wife demanded, her tears stopping instantly. Jessica. She says there are things I should know. The color drained from my wife's face so fast I thought she might faint. Don't answer that. But something in her reaction told me I absolutely needed to answer that. I called Jessica back immediately. Hey, she said when she picked up. I've been sitting in my car for 20 minutes trying to decide if I should tell you this. Tell me what? My wife was frantically shaking her head, mouthing no over and over. Whatever Jessica was about to say, my wife was terrified of it. Can you step outside? This isn't a conversation you want to have in front of her. I walked toward the front door. My wife grabbed my arm again, harder this time. Please don't go outside. Please don't listen to whatever lies she's about to tell you. If they're lies, then I'll figure that out. But I'm going to hear what she has to say. I pulled free and stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. Through the window, I could see my wife collapsed on the couch, her head in her hands. Okay, I'm outside. What's going on? Jessica took a deep breath. I should have told you this months ago, but I kept hoping she'd stop on her own. She's been talking about you behind your back to our friend group. Really nasty stuff. What kind of stuff? She calls you boring. Says you're predictable and that she settled when she married you. Last month at brunch, she was laughing about how easy you were to control, how she could manipulate you into staying home just by pouting or picking a fight. Each word hit like a physical blow. What else? She's been flirting with guys at the gym. Heavy flirting. And she brags about it to us. Says it's nice to have men who actually make her feel desired, unlike her roommate husband at home. Roommate husband. The phrase made my stomach turn. There's more, Jessica continued. Remember that weekend she said she was visiting her sister? Yeah, 3 weeks ago. She was at a hotel with some guy from her spin class. She showed us pictures on her phone. Thought it was hilarious that you believed her sister's story. The porch seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Pictures of them together. At the hotel bar, in the room. She said you were so oblivious that she could probably have an affair right under your nose and you'd never figure it out. Through the window, I could see my wife watching me, her face white with panic. She knew. She knew exactly what Jessica was telling me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Because I thought she was just blowing off steam. Talking big to make herself feel important. But after tonight, after seeing how she treated you with those keys, I realized she meant every word. She doesn't respect you at all. She thinks you're weak. I thought about all those times she'd picked fights right before I was supposed to go out. All those sudden emergencies that required me to cancel plans. All those little digs about my friends, my interests, my choices. It hadn't been insecurity driving her behavior. It had been contempt. There's one more thing, Jessica said quietly. She's been telling people that if you ever grew a backbone and left her, she'd take you for everything in the divorce. She's already talked to a lawyer about hiding assets. The front door opened behind me. My wife stepped out, no longer crying, her expression hard and calculating. That's enough, she said. Jessica, go home. This is between my husband and me. Actually, I said, turning to face her, I think Jessica should stay, since apparently she knows more about what's going on in my marriage than I do. She's lying to break us up. Can't you see that? Show me your phone, I said calmly. What? Your phone? Show me the pictures from your sister's house 3 weeks ago. The mask slipped completely. For just a moment, I saw pure panic cross her face before she tried to recover. I don't have to show you anything. You're my husband, not my warden. Interesting choice of words, considering you took my car keys tonight because you thought you were mine. Jessica was still on the phone, listening to every word. Should I come back up there? She asked. No, I said, keeping my eyes on my wife. But don't go far. I think I'm going to need that ride again. My wife's facade cracked completely. You can't be serious. You're going to believe her over me? Your own wife. I'm going to believe the person who's been honest with me tonight. And that clearly isn't you. She lunged for my phone, trying to hang up the call, but I stepped back easily. The hotel was the Marriott downtown. Jessica's voice came through the speaker, loud enough for my wife to hear. Room 847. She paid with the credit card from your joint account. My wife stopped trying to grab the phone and just stared at me, finally understanding that her carefully constructed lies were collapsing around her. Check the statements, Jessica continued. Check her location history. Check everything. Because I guarantee you, tonight wasn't the first time she's made you look like a fool. The silence on the porch stretched for what felt like hours. My wife stood there, caught completely, with nowhere left to run and no more lies left to tell. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd trusted with everything, had been systematically destroying me while laughing about it to her friends. I can explain, she finally said, but her voice was hollow. Can you? Can you explain why you've been cheating on me while telling everyone I'm boring? Can you explain why you've been planning to financially destroy me in a divorce while playing the loving wife at home? She tried to step closer, but I held up a hand. Don't. Every word out of your mouth for months has been a lie. Every fight, every manipulation, every time you made me feel like I was the problem. You were cheating and blaming me for being suspicious. You were stealing and calling me controlling for wanting transparency. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. Yes, you did. You planned every bit of this. Jessica told me about the lawyer, about hiding assets, about how you were going to take me for everything. This wasn't some accident or mistake. This was calculated. I turned back to my phone. Jessica, are you still there? I'm here. I'm going to need that ride after all. And maybe a place to stay tonight while I figure out my next steps. Of course. I'll be there in 5 minutes. My wife's composure finally shattered completely. You can't leave. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Counseling. I looked at her like she'd suggested we take a trip to Mars. You've been cheating on me, stealing from me, and planning to destroy me financially. What exactly would we counsel about? How to be a more effective liar. I'll change. I'll stop seeing him. I'll do whatever you want. You'll stop seeing him? Not I made a mistake, or I'm sorry. You'll stop seeing him. Like it's a favor you're doing me. She was crying again, but these tears felt different. Desperate. Panicked. The tears of someone who'd just realized that the consequences they'd been planning to inflict on someone else were about to land on them instead. Please don't do this, she begged. I love you. No, you don't. You love what I provide. You love having someone to control. You love having a safety net while you go out and have your fun. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent months tearing me down to your friends while building up some stranger from your gym. I walked past her toward the front door. I'm going to pack a bag. She followed me inside, still pleading. Where will you go? What about the house? What about our life together? The life together where you cheat on me and laugh about it? Yeah, I think I'll pass on that life. I went upstairs to our bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, and started packing essentials. Clothes, toiletries, important documents. She stood in the doorway, watching. I know I messed up, she said. But we've been together for 6 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something, right up until you decided it didn't. I zipped up the bag and turned to face her. You made your choice when you decided I was boring and predictable. You made your choice when you started sleeping with someone else. You made your choice when you hired a lawyer to figure out how to steal from me. I'm just making mine now. Car headlights swept across the bedroom window. Jessica was here. That's my ride, I said, shouldering the duffel bag. You're really going to her? I'm going anywhere that isn't here. I walked downstairs with her following behind me, still talking, still pleading, still trying to find some angle that would give her back control of the situation. But there wasn't one. She'd played every card she had, and they'd all been exposed as worthless. At the front door, I paused and looked back at her one last time. You know what the really pathetic part is? If you'd just treated me with basic respect, if you'd just been honest, if you just acted like you actually wanted to be married to me instead of trying to control and humiliate me, none of this would have happened. You created every single problem you were afraid of. But I was scared of losing you. So you cheated on me to keep me? You stole from me to prove your love? You called me boring and predictable to make our marriage stronger? I shook my head. You weren't scared of losing me. You were scared of me figuring out what you really thought of me. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The cool night air felt like freedom. Don't call me, I said without turning around. Don't text me. Don't show up at my work. When you're ready to discuss divorce terms, have your lawyer contact mine. I don't want a divorce. Well, that's another thing you don't get to control anymore. I walked to Jessica's car and got in. Through the windshield, I could see my wife standing in the doorway, still clutching my car keys like they might somehow give her the power to undo everything that had just happened. You okay? Jessica asked as we pulled away. I looked back at the house, at the woman in the doorway who'd spent months systematically destroying our marriage while blaming me for not being grateful enough for the privilege. Yeah, I said, and for the first time in months, I actually meant it. I think I'm going to be just fine.